just spoke to Councilwoman West. She said she was heading up. I'll give her a few minutes. It's 11:30 already. Hello. Good morning. All right, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, everybody, for the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. So good morning, everyone. I call to order the Monday, September 23rd, Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Call for approval of the minutes of August 12th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, we roll call? No?
Just take a
Oh,
vote.
okay. And all members in agreement, stay with him. Aye.
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 Public comments on agenda items only? Um, the, so the question was, will we going will we only going over the July financial statements? And Ms. Smith came to the podium and asked, will we be going over January, February, and the months all following? And then I'm going to have Mr. Troutman, our CFO, come up and answer that question.
Is that on? Yeah, I couldn't hear.
Hello. There we go. Good morning, Council and Ms. Smith and the public. The simple answer is these are cumulative financial statements that we'll be talking through, so they will encompass the January through July. The previous financial statements that were shared with the committee would have done the same thing starting with the month of May when I started. Okay? So, should I start in on the financials?
Yes, you can go.
Okay. So, the year-to-date is favorable. That would be the starting high arching comment. Everything is in context of the $43.2 million that's owed for the pensions, that's the unpaid MMOs. 38 plus in the police, 2.3 in fire, and 2.7 in the non-uniform. Those three pensions combined are 43.2 million. So everything is in context to that. But the good news is for the operating revenues and expenses for the year, we are favorable. So we're favorable year to date. So we're favorable year to date on both. A little bit more of the specifics. So I'll start with the cash position. The city is in a very favorable position right now. We have $28 million worth of cash in the operating accounts. And we have, from a staffing standpoint, we have 53 vacancies as the end of July with 11 individuals on workers' comp. The revenues, as I had mentioned, are favorable to what we had expected them to be. There's a number of favorable areas, and we have received good news, actually great news, in that the SAFER grant, which was paying for a number of firefighters, was extended. and that will produce $500,000 of revenues for this year that were unbudgeted. And those are really not in the numbers yet. So that's going to be something that will be flowing through for the rest of the year.
Mr. Trump, quick question while I have you. Do you know the exact time or how long it was extended until?
The man who got it done is behind me.
So, Councilman, the grant period ended on March 9th of this year. It has been extended through until December 31st of this year. So we're fixing the system that allows us to draw the money down. The FEMA has to update it to the end date from March 9th to December 31st. Once that's done, we'll begin requesting payments. So, but it will all be collected by January 1st, January 2nd next year. But I plan on, we do quarterly drawdowns. So I'm waiting for the system to be updated and we'll start making quarterly drawdowns.
It'll be earned in the current year.
And
So-
what money is this again?
This is for the SAFER grant, Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response. It was a grant that was Commissioner Rigby had applied for and we were awarded. It allows us to hire 8 additional firefighters, and that grant paid for the salary and benefits of those 8 firefighters. It's typically for 3 years. Due to the fact of there was a change in the contract that the salary, it takes longer now to get the full salary of a firefighter. It went from 3 to 5 years with contract negotiations. So the amount of money that we thought we were going to need to pay for 8 firefighters over 3 years was actually more because it changed to 5. So we had about $800,000 left over, and that's why, and part of it too was some of the firefighters didn't take benefits, so we weren't paying for their health care, which is expensive. So because of that, we had $800,000 left over. That's why the federal government doesn't really want the money back. They'd rather us expend it or hand back as little as we can. So that's why they grant us the December 31st. We're gonna be able to collect 500, a little over 500 of the 800,000 that we had remaining in the grant. So unfortunately, we're leaving $300,000 on the table, but it will also allow us to have a better case. One of the grants we'll be applying for next year is another SAFER grant to get more firefighters in here and have their salaries fully paid.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So for our purposes, for the financials, that'll be an extra $500,000 that wasn't counted on that will be coming in this year.
Will that also include the potential 300,000 that we missed out on as well? Was that factored into the numbers or no?
No. So the 800,000 was not budgeted, of which 500,000 we'll be able to recoup. And we also have seen improved estimates on the developers' fees. That was, and then some of the other revenue line items are coming in favorable. So the revenues are favorable to what was expected. The expenses are also favorable to what was projected, budgeted. And so first of all the pensions are up to date. They're being paid for current. So there will not be a traditional December type of massive pension payment. We're paying them as we go throughout the year. A large part of the expense favorable is because of the vacancies, the combination of the compensation and the benefits. And we happen to know that some of the other benefits that we pay as we go are also favorable year to date. So there's a number of things that are coming together to be favorable for the projections for the year. So the net of those two, the improved revenues and the improved expenses, are netting to a $2.1 million improvement to what the year is projected to end. And again, it's all in context of owing the 43.2 million, but it's going to mean that the revenues for the year will be able to cover the expenses for the year. So we're in an improved state for that. With that, I will stop with the formal comments and entertain any questions.
So my first question would be, did you say the city of Chester will be able to make our minimum MMO payments for this year?
Yes, easily, frankly. That's an easy thing. We have $28 million in the bank, and we've been paying as we go. So we're we're essentially 2/3 of the way through the payments, and we still have plenty of cash.
Okay, and with that being in context to the vacancies, can we get a little bit more, I guess, in-depth explanation on those vacancies and how they might affect the budget going forward if those positions are to be filled? Because I'm assuming that we plan to fill those positions.
The projection is that some of them will be filled this year. We know that there's a number of police officers that are in the pipeline. We know that there are a few staff that are expected to be hired.
So I guess in context, asking going to my question, could you give us an estimate number on how many of those vacancies are specifically the police department? How many of those vacancies are maybe city hall employees?
Yes, there's 31 of the vacancies were in the police department, and that would mean that there's 22 that would be other staffing. I believe there are 4 firefighters?
You are correct, 4 firefighters.
4 firefighters, so that would mean 19 administrative types of positions would be the vacancies. Several of them got hired in the Public Works and Streets area in the last couple of weeks.
Last 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks, we picked up, I think, 7 full-time employees in the Public Works Department, 2 drivers, and 5 laborers.
But they're not new hires in Public Works.
They are. They're new full-time hires. They were per diem staff that worked over the summer. They were
Okay.
seasonal hires.
Okay.
And then when it was realized there was 7 vacancies within the Public Works Department, and Public Works and Parks. I think there was 6 in Public Works, 1 in Parks. When it was realized that we did indeed have those vacancies, the Public Works and Parks Department directors looked at, well, we opened up the applications to everyone, but the per diems that applied, because we had worked with them, and they knew that, hey, these are kind of, I don't want to say the pick of the litter, but that, you know, we
They
had
were
a good
good
working,
employees.
we had a good working relationship, and they were good employees. Once the application period was closed, they were all brought on full-time, and that happened, I want to say it was a week ago this past Friday.
I think their effective date was the 9th.
I believe so, yeah, the 9th, so, and we're currently kind of conducting the same audit, if you will, to where the other vacancies that exist in other departments, once we verify that there are vacancies in those departments, we're gonna be hiring more full-time people. The equation was basically there's what we actually have boots on the ground, what we think we have in ADP, and then what we think we have with our headcount report. And we're just now verifying all that, and then once that's all verified, then we're gonna post that. We just wanna make sure what we think we have is actually what we have and vice versa.
Okay.
So this last sheet that you gave us is representative of of these sheets here?
Yes, the last email was the revised, the PowerPoint was put onto 3 sheets
Right.
to condense it And the financial statement, you'll know that it's at the bottom of each of the principal statements is an italic statement that says in context of the 43.2 million still being owed for the pensions to help clarify the discussions we've had recently to make sure that that was duly noted. For what it's worth, at the bottom of the expense schedules, there is a summary of compensation, benefits, and other expenses. And a quick add shows that year-to-date through July, the compensation and the benefits add up to 2.7 million. So we've, as a city, we have, quote unquote, saved $2.7 million in the vacancy grouping through July.
Gotcha, thank you. And I'm just going to reiterate what you said and what we also discussed. Within context, the city of Chester is still owing roughly $43 million for past payments.
Yes.
Okay.
But we're
Yes.
up to date on the current.
I'm sorry, Ms.
But
West.
we're up to date on the current,
Absolutely. We are up to date on the current,
but still owe the 43 million.
which is from prior years. Yes.
Those 7 new public works, parks persons, we subtract that from the 19?
I believe so. In fact, I'll say yes. Yes.
Yeah, if this is through good to July, since they were just hired in September, that take
Okay.
7 away from that 19.
We got 12-ish.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. With the recent other changes administratively, it's plus minus. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Troutman.
Yeah.
Any
Okay.
questions from any members on committee?
And I'll give you a little teaser. The August is in for editing, and it's consistent. We have another month, but that's not quite ready to publish. It'll be later today, probably. But that's tracking as well.
Thank you, Mr. Troutman. Do we have any questions, comments from any members of the public? Ms. Smith, you weren't here. Mr. Troutman was done giving his presentation, and we were all done as a committee asking questions within our own self. Our own, yes.
I do have a question. Is the public comment part yet?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Excuse me. It was mentioned that there's vacancies, 31 police, 4 fire, 19 were 7 for public works and parks. How much money is needed to employ these new hires? Out of the cash that you said you have 28 million. And you said some positions are filled.
I didn't want to cut you off, Ms. Smith. That was the end of your questions.
That was into that question.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to answer that question to the best of my ability.
Okay.
And anything that I do miss, I'm gonna let Mr. Troutman and/or
Okay.
Chief Shirley pick up where I'm missing. Okay. So that was for those numbers that you gave off: the 4 firefighters, the 31 vacancies, and the other, I guess, staffing members.
Right.
Was effective as of July. So we did hire as of, I guess, September 7th. So the number of the 19 is now 12. So you did miss that when you stepped out.
Okay.
But we still need the 4 firefighters and the 31 vacancies for the police department. So that is to answer my question in regards to the specific numbers that you asked about. Now, the number in regards to how much is needed to compensate those positions, I'm going to let Mr. Troutman.
Actually, Councilman, if I may.
You come to the microphone, please.
Certainly. Ms. Smith, it's not that we don't have the money to pay for those positions. We do have the money to pay for those positions. It's just they're not filled. And because they're not filled, the expenses that we would have been paying had they been filled, we're now realizing that we're saving that money. So we have the ability to pay for those positions. They were budgeted positions, but because they're not currently filled, that's basically the savings that we're saying we have. We could hire 30 cops tomorrow. It's just unfortunately the number of applicants, and again, there's just no one to fill those shoes, if that makes sense.
Okay, but is that a part of that 28 million that you indicated that you have on hand cash? That would take care of those individuals if you would employ everybody? Would you have enough to take care of them plus your current staff?
The simple answer is yes. The 28 million can cover all potential hires, all potential projected expenditures, and have enough sufficient cash to position us to go through next tax collections.
So that $28 million is not, is reflect, let me speak to the chair, I'm sorry. That $28 million is reflective to employees, not other expenses?
So you're asking the $28 million is reflective specifically for the employees and hires only, or is that?
Right.
No, that is entitling the whole, it compensates all the money that the city of Chester owns with all of its, how can I say this? Accounts. So that's all the city of Chester's accounts in their entirety.
So, and again, I don't mean to jump in, Rich can probably answer this, but again, same thing with expenses, and I'll just use the example of the fire department. For 2024, I asked for $100,000 for apparatus repairs. Year to date, I've only spent 60. So a lot of the expenses that we had budgeted for, we're not expending as much money as we thought we were going to be, so we're realizing savings there as well. And on top of that, we also said, hey, we're going to collect $1,000 in permit fees for 2024, and I'm making this number up completely just for illustration points only. What we're saying now is we thought we were going to collect $1,000. We've actually collected $1,500. So we're collecting more than we thought we were. We're spending less than we thought we were going to. And the same thing, we don't have as many people to fill the shoes as we thought we would. And CFO, probably, is that a fair, simple statement?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to answer that question. The simple answer is yes, there's sufficient cash in the 28 million to pay all the projected bills. We actually have 28 million at the end of August as well. And so that means we have 4 more months of expenses to cover. And August had the 3 payrolls, so we're down to 2 payrolls a month. We're down to the end of year expenses. We're consistent with all our pension payments. So there is no big back end expense. So there is sufficient cash in the bank to finish off the 4 months and actually have enough to position us for January and February before we get into March, when the tax collections start coming in. So we've looked ahead into the cash flow as well.
And if I just would follow up this, is that we're projecting to be, what did you say was 2 million?
Finish your sentence, I'll take it.
Okay. We're projecting to be 2 million ahead of where we thought we were going to be. Again, in the context of that we owe the $43 million. But what we will also say this too is that we're projecting that, but there's also not to say something that in December there could be a bill that we're not aware of that comes out. It's like, oh, hey, you owe $500,000 for that. Like, so we're optimistically cautious that this is where we think we're going to stand based on all the information that we currently have. But to Rich's point, the conversation he and I were having earlier is we're concerned that something that we weren't anticipating might come up. But not that we have anything to anticipate right at the moment, but we're cautiously optimistic.
So I'll say what Chief Shirley just said a different way is, back in December, the projections were done that expenses would be $1 million more than the revenues. So we were going to have to go into the cash reserves to make ends meet. We've wiped out that 2.1 million. So we're comfortable saying our revenues are going to equal our expenses for this year in total, and we're sitting with that kind of cash balance. We're not going to end the year at 28 million, but we're going to be in a good position to move forward into the beginning of next year.
One more question. You said, it was also mentioned, Mr. Chair, that pensions are up to date as of 2024. Now, what about the past years? Now, I guess the past years is probably caught up in the bankruptcy. So what about the MMOs for that? Is that something that y'all have to worry about, or that's under the bankruptcy situation?
So, again, Ms. Smith, I'm going to answer this question to the best of my knowledge, and
Okay.
anything that I do miss, I'm going to ask Mr. Troutman to pick up where I'm leaving off.
Thank you.
The city of Chester is making all its financial contributions to our pension plans as of the year to date. But we still owe all the past money. We don't have the money in the bank, savings, or any other account to pay what we owe. As a credit card company, you owe $10,000 and you still get a paycheck every week. You can still pay your bills and everything, but you still owe that credit card company $10,000. That's currently where the city of Chester is. We still owe $40 million. 43.2 million dollars, excuse me. However, we are making, as of today's date, the contributions that need to be made to be up to current date with all our pension payment plans. Say that correctly? Yes. There's a lot of P's. Yes.
Okay.
Did I
So
miss
is
anything?
that $43.2 million that's owed in pensions under your bankruptcy, under the city's bankruptcy plan?
To the best of my knowledge, I'm going to say yes, that is part of the bankruptcy plan. That is also part of what the receiver has to do when it comes to being in state receivership.
So, long story short, that won't be something that the citizens will have to pick up in 2025.
The citizen, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, us as the citizens, taxpayers.
I got you.
That won't show up on the 2025, that this is still a responsibility of the city versus the fact that it's a part of the bankruptcy, which is a separate entity. That's all I'm asking. I just don't want y'all to be out of budget next year because of that past owed pension for past. That's all I'm asking.
So,
And I'm gonna sit down now.
You can come to the podium, Mr. Troutman.
okay, there's a lot to unpack there, and let me start with the 43.2 million. So first of all, I will say, Chair, that was a good explanation. And to put numbers to it, we've paid a little over 10 million so far of our current year obligation of 14.8 million. So that's why I say we're tracking, and then and every month from here on out, we will continue to pay it down. The Act 205 is the principal mechanism to be able to pay much of the MMO that's in arrears, that's built into the city's annual budget. So, speaking to Ms. Smith's question for next year, the budget will include a large MMO cost that will be just like this year, is factored into the day-to-day expenses that will be paying part of that arrears, eating into it. So every year, the city operating budget will be eating into that 43.2 million. And that was the primary mechanism is the Act 205 earned income tax. That's the primary piece of it that pays it down, and it will take several years to do that. But that's how we meet the MMO obligation. but it is built into the normal course of the expenses that the city will be paying for out of its revenues they collect every year.
And I think, Ms. Olivia, and Rich can correct me if I'm wrong, I think to your question too is the $43 million going to be a part of the bankruptcy? Or, yeah, and that's what you asked, and that's why I wanted to discuss it. The short answer is I don't know, and I can find out for you. I want to say that it's probably a question that's up in the air right now because of the fact that it's, the way that I understand it, it's almost like your personal, if you were to declare bankrupt, if you were to personally. So, you know, I owe the bank $100,000 for my mortgage. As we work through the bankruptcy process, the courts might rule, okay, you owe the bank, it was $100,000, but because you're bankrupt, you can afford to pay 50. And that as part of the bankruptcy process, it might come back to the city, be like, look, you owed 43 million, but, you know, the ruling of the bankruptcy is, you know, you guys are going to have to pay 20 million. And these are just all made up numbers, but that's my understanding of. So I don't even know if we can answer your question of if the $43 million will be part of the bankruptcy and how much of it will be. Because if the bankruptcy judge says you can pay all $43 million, the city's going to have to pay it. If the bankruptcy judge says you're not paying any of it, you can't afford it, we don't pay any of it. So I hope that answers your question. And please, Rich or anyone else, correct me if I'm wrong in kind of relaying that information. I actually say that would be a fair statement.
Yeah, I would suggest that this is really complicated,
Yeah.
and it is certainly a factor, but obviously there is an obligation that's been established with the retirees. So there is sorting out all the different pieces of the debt that has to be paid and how much of the debt is all being factored in through the bankruptcy. But ultimately, the city will end up paying whatever it's told to pay through its operating money.
I have a response for you, Ms. Smith,
Yeah.
where you also might be able to get some answers. So tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we have MFRAC, the Municipal Financial Advisory Committee meeting. That'd be a great question to ask the receiver. Oh, gotcha. Well, anybody, okay.
Even
Any
if
members
you-
of the public, hold on one second,
Even
Commissioner.
if you can attend the meeting, you could submit the question and they will answer it, and then you can watch the meeting at a later time. They are recorded.
Okay. Any more questions or comments from any members of the public?
We're gonna have a financial statement on the agenda for Wednesday? You never have a financial piece on the agenda, so I'm just asking,
No.
finance committee.
No, that would have been something that we would have seen be put on the agenda Wednesday by noon of last week, and I didn't see anything like that, so I don't believe so, no. You're very welcome. All right, any questions or comments from any members on the committee?
Nope.
Hearing and seeing none, take a meeting, vote to adjourn. All members state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.